kind of, for those who haven't really looked at that, the difference, there's our espoused values, right? Those are the things that we say are important to us. I value honesty. I value whatever that thing might be. But then, right, our values in use, our lived values, what we actually do very often isn't in alignment with those things, and we tend to have coping mechanisms and ways in which we work that out for ourselves. But it's a normal thing, right, to have this sense of, here are the values that I think I have, but here's how I act in real life, because our values encounter the real world, right? And sometimes when they encounter the real world in different situations, maybe they don't seem to fit. And that's the real struggle of being an adult human being in a lot of ways, is just going through life, figuring out, how do I live my values as it meets the challenges of the real world? And so we see that also in organizations, right? So what we see is an organization, and maybe they've done really good work and they've really highlighted their values, what's important. They've put it even in behavioral terms, right? But that still doesn't necessarily match up with how they have built their organization. So one of the key things that you see a lot, particularly in privately held small business, is that people's compensation and how they get rewarded is actually pulling them away from organizational values. So for example, you can have an organizational value around teamwork, right? We value team, we take care of each other, and you can even articulate that really clearly. But if your bonus program rewards your salespeople as individuals in a way that causes them to actually compete against each other and do behaviors, right, whether that's skewing their numbers or lowballing, and how, there are all kinds of ways you can manipulate to, as an individual, to maximize your returns that, right, are going to be ultimately potentially damaging to the team. And so if your value is teamwork, just as an example, then your compensation structures should reward and be aligned around that value that you've created around teamwork. And very often they're not. And one of the reasons this is a challenge, particularly for growth oriented, privately held businesses, is they typically start off small, one or two people, a handful of people. And it's really easy to manage your values in that setting. I mean, right? Because everybody's close together, everybody knows each other. You've probably hired people because you know them and because you know your values align. But
Yeah.
as you grow, the systems shift and change, and you get a lot of input from the outside about what you should do and best practices. And so you see something, you learn it, you put it in, like, oh, I've learned this thing, I'm going to put it into my organization. But we don't necessarily do a gut check, a values check, to make sure that that thing is going to systemically line up with what it is we want to reinforce. And it really does come back down to a psychology thing, which is reinforcement and punishment, right? Good old behavioral psychology. And behavioral psychology seems simple. It's actually pretty darn complex when you look at things. Um, but it's worth it to take a look at what's happening in your environment and which behaviors are being rewarded or reinforced. The term reinforcement simply means anything that happens after a behavior that makes that behavior more likely to occur in the future, right? And so if you're reinforcing, right, stepping on the toes of other, stealing business away from your other, or lying to a customer, or if any of that gets reinforced, the word reinforcement literally means that behavior is going to be more likely to occur in the future. And so looking at how your structure is actually encouraging behaviors is a critical piece to me of organizational development. And most of the time, businesses that are small don't have the time to do it. They're so busy putting out fires, taking care of their customer, doing their core business, that they often don't have time to pull up to the balcony view, look down at their systems, and see what's going on. So what ends up happening is it becomes personalized and individuals get blamed, right? So Brian gets blamed for, as the, he's the cutthroat sales guy who, was just a jerk and hid stuff from other people and had his own off books CRM, so that he could hog up all the business, right? And so we blame Brian and he's a jerk. But we don't typically go up on a balcony and look at, well, maybe we actually created a system that incentivized Brian to behave in